Hello. Let's go over everything that I've read in the first 2 weeks of January. So, going forward, I would like to do weekly wrap ups since I know there are some months where I can read a ton of books, and then there's some months where I don't really read a whole lot. But I figure weekly wrap ups will at least give me something to bring you guys on a regular basis. So, yeah, this, though, is going to be more so of like what I read the first 2 weeks of January. And then after that, hopefully, it'll be more on a weekly basis. And then maybe some months it'll be like a mid-month kind of thing. So anyways, let's go ahead and let's jump into this. So far, I have already read 6 books. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6. And I'm in the middle of another one. Well, actually, I'm in the middle of 3. So we'll get to that. So up first, I have Ashina no Joe Fighting for Tomorrow by Asao Takamori. This is a manga series. It is considered one of the pinnacle series that helped jumpstart a lot of the sports mangas because this one is boxing related. And there have been tons of other boxing manga that have been inspired by Ashina no Joe. Such as like Hajime no Hippo, and then if you've watched the anime Megalobox, that one also, I believe that one actually takes place within the Ashina no Joe like world, like the greater world, because I have watched it and I know they reference Joe all the time, so yeah, but it's along those lines, like it helped inspire a lot of other mangas and it's considered like one of the pinnacles, and this is the first time that it is being brought out to the US with English translations. So, of course, as a sports manga girly, because I won't watch real life sports, but I will eat up sports manga, okay? So, of course, I had to read this one because I am actually in the middle of reading Hajime no Hippo. So, I decided, okay, well, let's read Ashina no Joe. And I got an early ARC copy of it back in December. So I went ahead and read it, and unfortunately I gave it 2 stars. And that's just because a lot of it did not age well. And the other half goes to where Joe's character starts out at. I do not like this guy. I do not like Joe's character at all. It is very hard. I'm so used to reading so many sports mangas where you're rooting for the underdog, and Joe isn't really written that way. He's written as this know-it-all jerk, scummy scam artist, and while he is 16 and you do get his backstory as to why he acts this way, it was just very off-putting for me because it's not what I was thinking I was going to be following. But it was also one of those things where I felt like it was being dragged out because this volume is over 600 pages, and it wasn't split up into chapters. I don't exactly know how this was originally written, chapter wise, but like he just kept doing the same things over and over again, and he kept having this horrible attitude and just being this like scum of the earth kind of character, and I was like, ew. And like by the time I got to the end of the volume, I was like, I really hope he gets the crap beat out of him. Like I really do. Like I really hope that it's part of his actual like plot and storyline to actually get the crap beat out of him, because he has this attitude of I'm the best fighter, nobody can take me down. And that's like partly why he acts the way he acts. And I'm just like, I don't like his character at all. It makes it very hard to want to cheer for him when he's such a horrible character in the beginning. And I know that there's still plenty more because there is quite a few volumes of this. I know chapter-wise there's like 170 chapters. I don't know what that equals in volumes, but it's a pretty decently long series. So I know eventually his character does grow and change, but like as a beginner opening series, I was like, oh, Joe, I don't like you. And then some of the other things that didn't really age well was some of the jokes with the children. Because he has like this, because he's 16, and so he ends up becoming like this like little icon for some of the other kids in the neighborhood. And some of the jokes that surrounded them were just kind of like, that didn't age well, like that kind of thing. And then the way that Joe ends up talking to one of the female characters, again, just put Joe in a really bad light for me, where I was like, oh, Joe, you're kind of an ugly character. Why would I root for you? Because like I said, at this point, I am actively hoping that he loses the fight that he's currently in, because the book didn't end with the final round. Obviously, they have to keep something for the next volume. I'm currently voting for him to hopefully lose, so that he could climb his way back up and, become more more of the kind of character that you would want to follow. So yeah, that's how that went. The art style reminds me a lot of early American cartoon style, and not so much what we associate with manga right now, and the style that Japan has created for their idea of cartoon characters. It does have this very early American, like Popeyes kind of vibe to it, which I thought was interesting, and a lot of like hijinky kind of stuff, which I wasn't expecting the hijink stuff, so that also threw me off a little bit. But overall, it was still like nice to be able to read it, and I am still glad that it's getting its American release. So that's at least really nice. So moving on. After that, I read Windbreaker Volume 1 by Satoru Nii. This is a delinquent manga. That's my bread and butter. And I gave this 4 stars. I did think one of the characters had his background story given to us just a bit too early. So it didn't hit like that emotional level that I would have preferred to have had. Whereas like if we had gotten to see this character fight and fail a couple of times, and then we get his background story as to why he wants to do this, it would have hit better. But like we only got the one scene, and then we got the tragic backstory, and I was just like, oh, it's not hitting right. Like it got to us just a little bit too fast. And sometimes I feel like it's okay to kind of like flesh it out a little bit more, let us be with this character, get to know this character, and then learn their backstory, because then it hits better. But other than that, like, I think the idea is really interesting. It puts a little spin on the delinquent mangas, where Sakura, the main character, he's used to everybody despising him and not wanting anything to do with him because, he's a delinquent. He gets into fights and all that other kind of stuff. They judge him based on his appearance. And he moves into this town where everybody is excited that another person has come, because the local school, the delinquents who go to that school, they protect the town. And he's trying to come to terms with this because it's not what he's used to. And so it puts this fun little quirky spin on it and everything, but it still holds true to a lot of the themes that you can find in delinquent manga, which is brotherhood, friendship, camaraderie, acceptance, and things like that. So yeah, I like the direction it's going, and I plan on continuing reading that series. Then I read Go Go Loser Ranger by Negi Haruba. This was also volume 1, and this one it's along the lines of like the Sentai mangas, so like Super Sentai, Power Rangers essentially. But it's like superhero, it's in that realm, and instead of following the heroes, you're following a villain. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was alright. It wasn't anything like super spectacular or anything. I thought the reveals of certain characters came way too fast. I do feel like manga recently, because a lot of mangas get cut pretty early on, they're starting to kind of like rush through their storylines. And I like when they kind of like let them sit and marinate a little bit. But yeah, like it was interesting. It was an interesting little twist being able to follow the villain. But again, like I said, just certain things were revealed, in my opinion, just a bit too quickly. Also, there was the storytelling aspect, like the writing aspect, it was pretty repetitive. Like it kept repeating the main point of the series kind of like over and over again. And I was like, okay, I get it. Like you want to put the superheroes in their place. You want to prove them wrong. Like I get it. I've gotten it. You don't have to tell me again. So it was a little repetitive, which became annoying. Art style's fine. Pretty neat, clean, nothing too strange with that or anything. So yeah, I'm probably not going to continue on with that one because I'm not really into the Super Sentai stuff, but I had gotten an arc for it, so that's why I read it. So yeah, moving out of manga and into regular books. After that, I read Red in Tooth and Claw by Lish McBride, and this was a 1-star. This was really disappointing. And this would probably be, it's considered a Western horror. This is my 4th Western horror where I'm like, where's the horror at, guys? Where is it? Why is this not present? Like, you're claiming it's this thing, and yet all I'm getting is one aspect of it, and like, ooh, something scary, woo. Like, this one, I will say initially going into this, I did not know this was categorized as young adult. So when I had picked it up from my local library and saw that it was in the young adult section, I was like, what? But I still decided to give it a chance because, sometimes they surprise me. And unfortunately, this one did not. This one majorly disappointed me. First, there was no horror elements, like, at all. There really wasn't. Like, just to give you guys an idea, they lived in a settlement in a forest, and, like, the scary parts were howling in the night. And they're like, oh my God, why is there howling? Because you're in a forest where wolves and coyotes live. Like, I just kept getting annoyed that, like, that was their idea of setting the atmosphere. And I'm just like, this is not working. Like, and it would be like a paragraph or something where it's like, oh my God, she woke up in the middle of the night because of howling. Why is it there? Because you guys have stated multiple times that in this forest that you guys have your settlement in has coyotes and wolves because you guys have to protect your animals from them. Like, why can't I get a different sound that actually doesn't fit the area? Like, if they were not living in a forest and there was howling going on and the area wasn't known for wolves and coyotes, then yeah, that would have been something scary. But it wasn't, because the creature is all, like, the sound is already in the area. After that, there was just, like, no, like, actual atmosphere building. She was attempting to add in, like, this religious cult thing. Went nowhere. There was no deep diving into it. No exploration at all. Just, here's this guy who you can tell is super religious because he keeps saying everything is because of God. But then, like, she never really, like, used it to her advantage to, like, really bring up the creep factor. It was very obvious who the bad guy was, like, right from the get-go. It was so obvious. And then even her little, oops, I tricked you at the end was super obvious. You knew it was coming. The characters, I will say the main character, Fallon, she started out likable, but then by the end of the book, I wanted her to fall off a cliff. She just became extremely unlikable by the end of the book, and it's because it did what YA books tend to do in a very formulaic way of inserting a romance that really isn't needed. This one really didn't need a romance, and unfortunately it did, and the whole last half of the book just becomes, like, all about her being obsessed with this dude that she had fell in love with after meeting twice. She met him twice and was, like, madly in love with him on the third time. In a scene that was left with a plot hole. Like, the scene, like, what happened in this scene was never explained by the end of the book. And I'm like, what was the point of this? Why was this never explained? And it was so frustrating because I'm like, why? Why did we do this? So we could have a makeout scene. That was the purpose of that chapter. So that we could have a makeout scene. And I was just like, I was so frustrated. The second half of the book, like, becomes like the horror elements, like, whatever you want to attribute to being the horror elements, didn't come in until about 270-ish pages. That's almost the end of the book. Because then the next, like, big horror scene happens with 63 pages left in the book. And that was the only reason why I kept reading it, because I was so frustrated with this book that I was like, when does the actual horror show up, or does it never show up? And that was why I kept reading it. And yeah, just super all around big disappointment. And I'm just like, can I get a Western horror that actually has horror elements with the Western stuff? Like, why is this so hard to find? So yeah, major disappointment. After that, I read Mad Woman by Louisa Traeger, and this was a DNF. So this was technically a story about Nellie Bly. I don't know who that is. All I know from the story is that she was a journalist in New York. Other than that, I've never heard of Nellie Bly, but I don't follow journalists, so yeah. But it's supposed to be about her, and what attracted me to the book was when I read the synopsis, it said that she pretends to be crazy so she can get put into an insane asylum so that she can write a article on it so that people know what's going on inside these asylums. And then she ends up regretting it because now she can't get out of it. And I was like, that sounds really interesting. And the prologue started out like with her like going and being like put into this institute and her already having those thoughts of what did I get myself into? And then it starts from like the beginning of her life. Like the first chapter is like the beginning of her life, and it became the driest thing that I have ever read. There was just no flair, no entertainment, no anything. Like it was just dry sentence from sentence to sentence, and it was just like she did this and then she did this and then she did this and then she did this, and I was just like, am I reading a textbook? Like what is this? And it was just like, I made it like 80 pages, and it took me like 4 hours to read 80 pages because it was so dry and slow. And I was just like, oh. Like it made me read slow. Like I can read 100 pages in like an hour and a half. Like 4 hours? And I didn't even hit 100 pages. I was like, this is not happening. This is not happening. And by the time I made it to the 80 pages, she still wasn't even in the realm of doing the storyline with the insane asylum. Like she was still just trying to like step foot into being a journalist and being accepted because, you know, she's a woman and it's a man's world, blah, 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 you know? And the book was only like, it was under 300 pages. It was only like 280 something pages. And I'm like, I am almost at 100 pages and homegirl is still not at the asylum yet. I don't have time for this. And so I DNF'd it. And then the last one was actually a classic, and I threw it on when I was making dinner one night, and it would be The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And I have never read this book, but I am familiar with the characters of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But when I say modern depictions have greatly changed the way this story plays out, I am not kidding. All this time, every single modern depiction that I have ever seen of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is Dr. Jekyll is like a normal looking dude, and Mr. Hyde is like this big, hulking, scary monster kind of thing. That is not how they're written in this book. Dr. Jekyll is written as a tall man, just like your average tall dude, and Mr. Hyde is written as a short, angry little goblin of a man, who wants to kill people. And it threw me off because I'm sitting there listening to it while cooking dinner, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, did they just say Hyde was small? And I had to like stop for a second and go look up like different modern versions that I've seen of this, because like if you've watched Van Helsing, the movie, he's like this big giant monster. Yeah. You know, and like all the modern depictions that I've ever seen of these characters are in that manner. And that's not how it is in the story at all. He is described as being the evil half of Jekyll, because from the story, Jekyll he's aware of like these evil thoughts he has, and he starts taking these potions to separate the Hyde from himself, and these potions create this alternate version of himself that goes out and kills people and whatnot, and then he becomes dependent upon the concoction that he's created to suppress Hyde, and eventually ends up, you know, losing out and everything. But it's just completely different. Like from like modern interpretation of it is so vastly different from what was written in this story, and it was honestly such a surprise to me. It wasn't like a story that like really blew me away, but it was more interesting in just the terms of like what it is and what it's become that was more interesting to me. So yeah, it's a 3-hour audiobook. So like I definitely recommend like giving it a listen if you've never actually like known the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because it's so different. It's so different than what modern interpretations have done to it. It's so different. Yeah, it was honestly kind of crazy. So yeah, anyways, so those are the things that I have finished within the first 2 weeks of January. I am still in the middle of reading Seven Forges by James A. Moore, and I know you guys are probably sitting here going, why is it taking you so long? Are you even enjoying it? I am very much enjoying it. I have decided that I'm going to start reading my books a lot slower, and just kind of like taking my time through them, especially if I am like really enjoying them, because I have learned that when I rush through stories, I remember less. And when I take my time with them, I remember more and I tend to enjoy them more. So I do try and take my time with them. I know a lot of these probably seem like I went through them pretty quickly, but like mangas are usually around like 125 pages, and then not counting the Ishida no Joe, but I spent 3 days reading that one. And then the Red in Tooth and Claw, I spent 3 days reading that one, and then I DNF'd the other one. So, but yeah, so I am still enjoying Seven Forges, and then I am also still reading Luda. Same situation, just taking my time with it. And then I started The Dragon's Promise, which is book 2 in the Six Crimson Cranes duology by Elizabeth Lim. So, and I am very much enjoying that one so far. Some of the reviews that I saw, I do understand where some of them are coming from, but I am currently like really enjoying it. It's sitting at like a 4-star for me right now, which is nice, because after those last 2 that didn't go over very well, I needed something good. So yeah, that is everything that's going on right now. So hopefully by the next update, which will hopefully be next week when I do a weekly update, I will have finished The Dragon's Promise, because I do want to finish that because it is a library book and I gotta return it next week. So I want to get that one finished, and then I want to focus on the Seven Forges and Luda and get those ones done and out of the way. So yeah, there is my mid-month check-in. Like I said, going forward, I'm going to be focusing more on weekly updates. But yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you have read anything here, I would love to hear your thoughts on them. If not, or if anything sounds interesting to you, I'd love to hear that too. But yeah, so until next time, bye.